Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today we have a big show for you. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is baseball predictions. Opening day is tomorrow. All games, I believe, start at 3. The first games of the day start at 3:05. Excuse me. They just got postponed, actually, due to rain. So the Brewers and the Mets and the Phillies and the Braves will not be playing until Friday. But the first game of the day is at 3:05. That's when opening day begins. Every other game, I believe, starts at 4:10 on the East Coast. The Rangers have their World Series game at 7:35 Eastern Time. Anyway, and then there's a couple late West Coast games as well. But opening day for everyone but the Brewers, Mets, Phillies, and Braves is tomorrow. So we're going to do a very special Sports by GSMC Podcast Network baseball prediction show. We're going to go divisions one at a time, the East, the AL and NL East together, the AL and NL Central together, and the AL and NL West together. And we're going to finish off the show with playoff predictions, World Series champion, everything just like that. But before we get too far into our predictions, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message. It'll show up at the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you have to say. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to start off in the AL and NL East. And we'll start off in the AL East, probably one of the more competitive divisions this year, a division that could potentially go 5 deep. You have at the bottom of it, presumably, you have the Red Sox, who tooled up a little bit this offseason. They got a lot better. They made some defensive changes. They brought in some pitching today. They just traded for a pitcher from the Rays, actually, 30-year-old who pitched 9 years in Japan, wasn't going to make the roster on the Rays, was traded to the Red Sox. So they've shored up a couple of their holes, and you're still in a division with the reigning best record in the AL, Baltimore Orioles, who are calling up Jackson Holliday. They just brought in Corbin Burns. That team improved. The Rays, who started off the last season on an insanely hot pace, made the playoffs, kind of faltered. They lost some players, but they are still really good. The Rays are a very well-run organization. The Yankees tooled up. They added Juan Soto to a lineup that, if they can stay healthy, is one of the scariest tops of the lineups in all of baseball. Toronto still has Vlad Guerrero, cover athlete on MLB The Show. Their pitching is elite up there. Kevin Gausman leading the charge. And then, of course, and yeah, that's all the teams. But that division is going to be isn't going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. I could see that division taking up all the wild cards. Taking up all the wild card slots this season in the AL. But one team has to win it. So, the way that I'm looking at it here, last year the Orioles were the best team in the AL, and they only got better. It's hard to pick against them. I have the Orioles winning this division. Not easily, though. I don't think they're going to repeat, because that division is going to be a lot better than it was, last season. You have the Yankees, who were hurt all of last season, and now they add in a guy like Aaron Judge, or they add in a guy like Juan Soto to Aaron Judge, who hopefully will be healthy this season. That team is going to be scary once they get Garrett Cole back, which might tank their season a little bit. And Tampa Bay isn't kind of took a step back halfway through last season. I still think they'll be good. I think this division produces at least 3 playoff teams. At least 3 of them. You have your there's a chance that it might even produce four, might give you all all three of those wild cards, but it's gonna be tough for that to happen. So, when I'm looking at the AL East here, my winner is, we'll start at the bottom. Boston's gonna be my 5. I have Toronto, or Toronto in the 4, Tampa Bay at 3, the Yankees at 2, and Baltimore, the number 1, winning that division. Like I said, this is going to be one of the more competitive divisions. I expect at least 2, probably 3 of these teams to make the playoffs, in the AL at least. You have a couple of contenders out there in the West: Houston, Texas, Seattle. The Central is probably the weakest division in the AL, so I doubt they produce more than the 1. But that AL East is stacked. That AL East is not a division that, if I am picking one to be confident in, that's probably going to be the one that I'm the least confident in the AL, at least. Just because so much can happen. I feel like it's kind of the opposite of the way that the AL Central is, where all these teams are just kind of okay. All these teams in the AL East are great. So it's going to be a bloodbath in there. It is going to be so much fun to watch AL East baseball this season. Baltimore, I have winning this division, with Yankees, Tampa, Toronto, and Baltimore, and Boston pretty close behind. I think this is going to be very competitive. On the NL side of the Eastern Division, though, this one is a little less surprising to me. Atlanta, just kind of far and away, has the best roster in this division. Washington is still tanking. They didn't call up any of their young guys, the Nationals. They had a couple guys, James Wood especially, who was going off in spring training. They decided to leave him down in the minors. Not a decision I would have made, but a decision they did make. They are going to lose that division pretty easily. Philly always kind of puts up a fight, but Atlanta should run away with this division. Miami is, they made the playoffs last year. They made the wild card, but they're not quite there. They're still a little lacking on the offensive side. Their pitching took a little bit of a step back this offseason. And I'm not sure exactly what Miami team we're going to get, because Miami could be very good. They could sneak into a wild card spot. They're not competing for this division. The Mets are a team that's more odd to me, because it was a quiet offseason for Jared Cohen. Usually he's out there spending big money, getting all the big free agents, but he kind of took a back seat this offseason. In off-season past, he's went out and got Lindor. He's went out and got Javi Baez. He went out and he got Max Scherzer last offseason, paying him more than the entire Athletics roster. So he kind of took a step back from giving out those mega contracts this offseason, and I'm interested to see how it affects the Mets. The Mets kind of had a disaster season last year. Everything kind of imploded on them. So I think they'll be better than last year. As far as making the playoffs go, they might compete for a wild card. My standings for the NL East, as we predictions wise, Washington, the Nationals are going to be there at the bottom. I'm gonna put Miami at 4, the Marlins and the Mets at 3, but I think the Mets and the Marlins are very close. I think those two are going to be separated by just a game or two as we get down the stretch of the season. Philly in second. The Phillies are, really good. They gave out a couple big contracts this offseason. They're really trying to go all in and get past Atlanta. And get a World Series. Atlanta is still my number 1. They're my World Series favorites. Their roster is just so stacked. Their pitchers, they probably have the best rotation in baseball. Spencer Strider, Chris Sale at the 4, Charlie Morton, Max Fried. That is terrifying. 1 to 4, number 5 isn't that bad either. They They are a loaded team. They have the reigning MVP in Ronald Acuna. They have Matt Olson, who probably is the second best first baseman in all of baseball, only behind Freddie Freeman. You have an elite defense in center with Michael Harris. You have really solid corner infield, third base. Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, one of the best second basemen in all of baseball. You can go up and down that roster. They are stacked at every single position. Not Will Smith. Sean Murphy, the catcher they got from Oakland, is a beast back there. That team is unfair. They have the best roster. They have one of the best. They can go toe to toe with the Dodgers roster wise on paper, and the Dodgers have an insane roster. You can make an argument that the Braves is better. That's how stacked this team is. The Braves are very, very good. They're gonna win this division. So coming out of this division, I think there's only going to be the Phillies and the Braves. I think the Phillies will be the only wild card. But we'll talk about all that in a little bit more in just a second. Coming up in our next segment, we're going to talk about the Central divisions, the AL Central and the NL Central. The NL Central is very interesting. That is kind of a toss-up between a whole bunch of teams, actually. The Central divisions are always crazy. So we'll break all of that down in just a second. Stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the AL and NL East. I have the Baltimore Orioles and the Atlanta Braves winning those divisions with a couple wild cards from those, but we'll go over all that in a second. Phillies wild card in the NL, and I have the Yankees and the Rays as the wild card in the AL. But before we get into in this segment, we're going to talk about the NL Central and the AL Central. We're going to talk about the Central divisions. But before we break down the NL and AL Central, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. Excuse me. We appreciate anything that you do give. If you leave a message with that tip or donation, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there for you, me, everyone watching around the world to see. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to talk about the AL and the NL Central. And I'm going to start in the NL Central this time, because I think the AL Central can go in a lot of different directions. And so it's honestly so can the NL Central. You have teams like the Cardinals who are coming off a really surprisingly bad season. They still have a roster to compete. They made a couple of changes. I think the loss of Yachty really kind of threw them into a whirlwind. and I think they're going to start to figure out how to deal with that this season. You have Nolan Arenado, you have Paul Goldschmidt, you have a team that won 5 Gold Gloves just a couple seasons ago. So this team will be very, very solid. And I expect them to have a bounce back campaign. Pittsburgh is a team full of young guys. O'Neal Cruz had an unfortunate injury that took him out for most of last season. Brian Hayes, if he can figure out how to swing a bat, his elite defense at third, he jumps into conversation for being one of the best third basemen in baseball. The Reds, we kind of saw what they did. They flirted with being a playoff team after bringing up all their guys, Ellie De La Cruz, and they're finally going to get pitching back. The Reds are. The Reds are a team that Hunter Green was hurt last season. All of their young pitchers were hurt last season. They're going to get them back. I expect them to be really good. The Cubs kind of stood pat. They also just missed the playoffs last season. They were one of the last couple teams that missed it. They brought back Cody Bellinger, but they didn't really do much this offseason. So I'm interested to see how they run it back. And the Brewers lost a lot. They lost an elite pitcher in Corbin Burns to the Orioles in Baltimore. They lost a couple and the bats have always been the issue. And without that elite pitching, their closer Williams is out for at least a month after getting injured just about last week. So they're going through a lot right now. Milwaukee, I think, is going to be the worst. Is going to be the worst team in this division. I think Pittsburgh has not quite a breakout season, but an improved season. I think they're going to finish above Milwaukee there. So Milwaukee 5, Pittsburgh 4. I'm putting Chicago at 3 because I do believe in this St. Louis team. I think that they're too good to be as bad as they were last season, and I'm putting them at 2nd in the division. The Reds, I'm so excited to see what that roster is going to be like when they have pitching. They had the offense to keep up with just about any team, but they could not pitch to save their lives, really. So the fact that they're getting healthy on the pitching side and their bats are going to be young and the same, I think they're going to win this division again, not easily. The Cardinals, I think, are going to give them quite the challenge. The Cubs could come up and provide a little bit of a problem for them as well. But I'm picking Cincinnati to win this division. There might be one wild card from here. I think St. Louis, the Cardinals might be able to sneak into a wild card spot here again. But when you have teams that are practically locked into a wild card, Philly, for instance, I don't see them missing the playoffs. Arizona, I don't think is going to miss the playoffs, but those two teams play in divisions where you have the Braves and the Dodgers in them, so they're not going to win the division. St. Louis probably will steal that last wild card spot, but, the Padres could figure things out. The Giants had a really quietly nice offseason. They got a lot of the big free agents there at the end. They brought in Blake Snell. They brought in Matt Chapman. They did a pretty good job in free agency. They might be able to sneak in. But the NL wildcard race for that last slot is wide open. So that's going to be a race to watch there. Moving on to the AL, and this one I think is a little more interesting, the AL Central. This is a division that kind of is running around without a leader, Almost every other division has a team that, they won it last year, and there's a clear favorite in all of these divisions, really. Except for the Central. And the Central could go crazy. Now, the one team that I don't think could win the division is the White Sox. The White Sox are going full tank mode. They are trading away all of their key pieces right now. So the White Sox, I expect to finish last in that division. They need to hit that reset button. They need to hit that big red reset button really, really badly and really, really quickly. So they are in the midst of doing that. So they're going to be at the bottom of that division. But then you have the rest. You have the Tigers, you have the Twins, you have the Guardians, and you have the Royals. Those 4 teams, the Twins and the Guardians have been battling for the last couple seasons at the top. The Guardians have the roster to win this pretty handily on paper, but the Guardians constantly underperform. They love to keep it close no matter what. So the Guardians are a team that should probably win this division, but I don't think they're going to. I think fourth in that division is going to go to Detroit. Although I do think Detroit is going to have a much better season. They've been kind of in the droves of rebuild for quite some time. So very excited for them. I've seen Scooball, one of their pitchers, get legitimate Cy Young hype. So they are a team that I think could much improve. Another team that I think is going to be much improved is the Royals. The Royals, I think, could compete for this division. They've got Cole Reagans, another young guy who looked really good on the mound at the end of last season. I expect him to be a true ace this year. And the Twins are just injury riddled. That's really all it is. If the Twins were 100% healthy, they would run away with this division. But when you have a megastar in Byron Buxton who can't stay on the field, there is a noticeable difference in the Twins with and without Byron Buxton. And he is just that kind of player. He is an elite baseball player. And when he's on the field, he affects your game, the other team, so much. But when he's off the field, like he is so many times, way too much to be counted on as that number one guy, the Twins are kind of lost. They kind of just are an okay team. And they have some guys on there. Carlos Correa is still there. They've got some solid pitching, but I just don't trust the Twins to stay healthy. The Twins and the Guardians are teams that probably should run this division. But at 4 in this division, 5 is the White Sox. 4, I'm going to put the Detroit Tigers. 3, I'm actually going to put the Minnesota Twins there. I'm going to put Cleveland at 2, the Guardians, and I think Kansas City, the Royals, are going to win this division. The Royals have a nice young hitting core. They just locked up Bobby Witt to a huge extension. I believe it was like a 13-year, $288 million deal for the young stud. I think they're primed for a breakout. I really do. The Guardians are kind of the old stalwarts. They're gonna be good. So are the Twins. And I think the Guardians might have a chance of pulling this one out. But I really like this Kansas City team. The Royals, I think, are really going to be that shock of baseball this season. So I'm going to put them to win this division. I don't think there's going to be a single wild card out of the AL Central. It's like I said, it's kind of slim pickings, especially in the AL when you have that AL East that can go 5 deep, you can say, or in the playoffs. The AL West, you can go 3 deep. The Central just doesn't really stack up to those other 2 divisions, at least in the AL, and still kind of in the NL as well. The Central is kind of a disappointing division for both sides, but I do think that these races for the division are going to be really tight. It's going to be a one bid, one playoff team division for both the NL and the AL, I believe. Although the NL Central might be able to push one more in. But those division races for the AL and NL Central are going to be some of the more exciting things in the baseball season coming up. So yeah, I have the Kansas City Royals winning the AL Central just barely over the Cleveland Guardians, the Minnesota Twins, and the Detroit Tigers. In the NL Central, I've got the Reds taking the division, followed closely behind by the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Cubs. Those division races should be a lot of fun to watch down the stretch, so keep an eye on that. But in our next segment coming up, we're going to talk about the AL and NL West. You have the Dodgers, Padres, Arizona Diamondbacks, San Francisco Giants in the NL West. In the AL West, you have the Houston Astros with the Mariners and and the World Series champion, defending Texas Rangers. MLB season starts up tomorrow. MLB prediction show continues, coming up right after this break on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now. Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you were just tuning in, we've been doing a whole baseball prediction show. We have made it through the AL and NL East, the AL and NL Central. Here in segment 3, we're going to finish off the divisions. We are going to start talking about the AL and NL West, consisting of the 2 representatives of the World Series from last season, as well as some stalwarts and some of the most stacked rosters in all of baseball. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMC Sports Network, GSMC Podcast, GSMCpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is GSMCpodcast.net. If you leave a message with it, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. GSMCpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to talk about the AL and NL West. The AL and NL West consisting of the 2 representatives of last year's World Series with the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. It's going to be a very interesting season for these teams, I think. I'll start in the NL. They're the only 2. The Dodgers and the Padres played 2 regular season games in Seoul, which, side note, I think is dumb to have that be regular season games while spring training was going on, and then at least having them come back and play more spring training games after that. Anyway, that's a whole nother tangent. I am not a fan of that. I think they could have handled this a little bit better. It kind of takes away a lot from opening day. But they split that series. The Dodgers, who had probably one of the best off seasons of all time, adding one of the best players of all time, Shohei Ohtani, for on a $700 million deal. 10 years, $700 million. They added Yoshinobu Yamamoto on a $300 million deal, the prodigy pitcher from Japan. He pitched his first game. He got chased after an inning. We'll see. The jury's still out on it. I'm not too worried about him yet. Could have been anything, nerves and stuff. But Yoshi Yamamoto is going to be nasty in the league. The Dodgers have one of the scariest big threes you can possibly imagine. Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. Those are the big three, and you haven't even gotten down to guys like Will Smith, who's an elite catcher, Max Muncy, who's a great power hitter. Clayton Kershaw is still on that team. They added Tyler Glass now. It's it's a stacked roster over there in LA. And I expect them to run away with that division, quite honestly. It would be a shame if they didn't. They were going to win over 100 games. But if there's a team that can keep pace with them, and I do not think there's a team that can keep pace with them, the Arizona Diamondbacks, your World Series runners-ups, they basically returned all of the same roster. They still have their ace, Zach Gallen. Corbin Carroll is still in there. That roster is super young, super hungry to get back there. They're going to be really, really good this season. If they were in a division with anybody else that wasn't the Dodgers, I think they would probably win it. They're probably the third best team in the NL behind the Braves and the Dodgers. Pretty easily. I think there's a gap between the Braves, Dodgers, everyone else, and then you have Arizona and Philly together, and then the rest of the NL is kind of below them. So it's crowded there at the bottom in the NL. The wild card race is gonna be crazy. But the Dodgers should take that division easily. On the flip side of it, the Colorado Rockies, I expect to be the worst team in that division. They haven't done anything too productive this offseason, and they've been bad for quite some time. But a team that's really interesting to me, and a team that I had trouble at least ranking in this division, the Dodgers. Not the Dodgers. The Giants. The Giants are a team that just kind of refuses to give up. They had that dynasty that ended almost 10 years ago, I believe, but Buster Posey retires. They're kind of mediocre last season, and then they kind of retool. They haven't gone into a full rebuild mode since I can remember. They've been trying to compete with an old roster, with paying guys, paying free agents, making smart investments. They have a really, really good pitching staff. They added Blake Snell to that, the reigning NL Cy Young. They, I think, are what the Padres want to be. The Padres went out and got bigger names than the Dodgers, but I think that's kind of the model that the Padres have been following, I think, at least. Not really building from the inside, getting all these free agents, and just holding a core. The Padres have kind of been a light version of that. They have not been very successful with it. But the Giants, I'm a big fan of what they did this offseason, really. So I think the Rockies are going to be at the bottom. I think the Padres will be the fourth team in that division, which is kind of crazy looking at their roster on paper with Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado, and it's just a mess. That whole team has been a mess for years. They were supposed to go all in, make this push, but they just have not been. They've been super disappointing, and I hope they can change it, because those elite players that are on that team, they deserve to be successful. They deserve to be remembered as a great team, because they could have had an all-time team when they had Juan Soto there, but it just wasn't working. Whatever they did was not working. So I have the Padres there at 4. The Giants I'm putting there at 3, below Arizona and the Dodgers. Arizona is just a super young team. We saw what they did last season. They beat the Dodgers in the playoffs. They obviously made it all the way to the World Series, where they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Texas Rangers of the 2024 MLB postseason, or 2023 MLB postseason, I guess. It's kind of unfair to play in a division with the Dodgers. Wild cards in this division, I expect Arizona to be in there. That's a lock. I think the Giants might be able to slide in. I think the wild card in the NL is going to be a race between the Mets the Dodgers. I keep saying the Dodgers. The Mets, the Giants, and the St. Louis Cardinals. Those three, I think, will compete for that last wild card spot. But we'll break down the playoffs in our segment coming up. Let's transition over to the AL side. The AL West is also really interesting. You have the defending World Series champions in the Texas Rangers, but if I'm being honest, I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. You have a juggernaut, a team that's probably still in dynasty mode in the Houston Astros, a team with a couple Hall of Famers on the roster. They're going to be really good. Well, one of the best pure power hitters in the game in Yordan Alvarez, one of the best run producers in the game. They're very, very good. I think the Astros are going to win this division. The A's obviously are at the bottom. The Angels with Mike Trout, as good as Mike Trout is, we've seen it. He cannot win. He's not enough to be successful in Anaheim, which is a shame. He needs to get to the playoffs. They need to get something going. It's been generationally mismanaged during his tenure there, which is a shame because he's one of the best players of all time. So Oakland 5th, they're just a mess. They are going to be homeless next season as they try and move to Vegas, but they don't have a place to stay in Vegas, and they're not playing back in Oakland. Angels are just ahead of them, probably the two most incompetent run teams in baseball right there. And then you have the Mariners. The Mariners, a team that broke the playoff drought 2 seasons ago, and kind of have been dead even since. They have one of the most electric players in baseball in Julio Rodriguez, and I'd love to see him in the playoffs again. And I think they might be able to get in. They made a couple smart, savvy moves. They're not really spending a lot of money right now. They have all their prospects up. Like I said, they were bad for a really long time, and now they are in wild card conversations. And then the Rangers, and this might be a hot take. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this division all that much. I don't think the Rangers are going to make the playoffs. I think defending champions are going to... They lost a couple pitchers. Pitching was already their weakness. They are going to have guys like Wyatt Langford up, who... how he fell to them, I don't understand. They got very lucky in that draft with a couple mistakes being taken. But Wyatt Langford is going to be very good. I believe he broke camp with the team. And the Rangers, their offense is going to be great. I just don't trust that defense and that bullpen. It just doesn't do it for me, and I think that might have them miss the playoffs this season. Seattle, I have ahead of them in that division at second, and Houston, I have winning it. I think Houston is just too good. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers made the playoffs, because they are the World Series champions, but there's just in how crowded the AL is, I just don't think they're one of those 6 best teams. I just don't think they're quite there. I think they might be number 7. You have at least 4 teams in the AL East that I think are better, but not all 4 of those teams are going to make it. They're going to cannibalize themselves a little bit. They're better than every team in the Central, and I think they're kind of on the same level as the Mariners are. It's just bound to the ball, whoever's going to be second in that division, I think. So it kind of puts them in that 7-8 region, so just missing it. It's going to be really tight. I just don't see them making the playoffs. I really don't. So in the AL West, Houston's winning it. I think Seattle's going to be second, Texas third, Angels fourth, Oakland A's fifth. And in the NL, the Dodgers obviously are going to win that division. The Diamondbacks I have coming in second. with the Giants in third, the Padres in fourth, and the Rockies in fifth place. The wild cards coming out, I have Arizona in the NL, and I have in maybe San Fran, and in the West, in the AL, I don't have any wild cards coming out of there. I think the wild card slots are going to get taken by the East, every single one of them. Maybe the Mariners sneak into that last wild card spot. But anyway, in our next segment, our final segment of the show, we are done with breaking down all the divisions. We are going to go into the playoffs. We're going to do a little playoff bracket. We're going to break down the bracket for you, see who I have winning, go round by round. So thank you so much for tuning in so far to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back with playoff and award predictions right around the corner. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. If you are just tuning in, we've just broken down all 6 baseball divisions as opening day is officially tomorrow. All 30 teams, other than the Braves, Phillies, Brewers, and Mets, I believe, because those games got postponed, will be playing tomorrow, opening day. Very, very exciting. Yeah, Mets and Brewers, that was the last pairing. So, very excited for all of this. We are going to get into playoff predictions. We're going to go over award winners and everything like that. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation. We appreciate everything you guys do when you're watching. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. If you leave a message, we'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Once again, we're going to talk about the MLB playoff predictions. Award show as well, but we're going to start in the playoffs. We're going to start in the NL here. The NL, my number 1 seed, is going to be the Braves. 2 seed is the Dodgers. Which leaves the Reds taking on Wild Card 3, which I'm going to give to St. Louis there. And then you have a NL matchup between the Phillies and the Diamondbacks in that wild card round. And I think rematch of the NLCS last year, Phillies Diamondbacks in round 1, that wild card round, is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have the Phillies winning that matchup. In the other one, the Reds taking on the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals will win that just because they have the experience. The Reds are a very, very young team. So moving on to the NLDS, you have the Dodgers taking on the Phillies, and the Braves taking on the Braves would be taking on the Phillies, and the Dodgers would be taking on the Cardinals. Yep, that's how it works. Yep, they'd be taking on the Cardinals there. The Dodgers and the Braves are destined to meet in the NLCS. Those are just the two best rosters in baseball. I expect them to meet to handle those series pretty easily. The Dodgers taking on the Braves in the NLCS is going to be a lot of fun. You have probably the two best rosters I've seen in a very long time facing off against each other in the playoffs. I hope this happens. This will be one of the most legendary series, at least on paper, of all time. So, taking a look at all of that, I am going to go with the Braves. I think the Dodgers are, if they had Shohei pitching this season, which I know he's not, then I believe I believe that if Shohei was pitching, they would win that series. But without him pitching, I think the Braves are going to take that and be the NL's representative in the World Series. Although there are a couple series in here that I'm very excited for. The NLCS rematch, and obviously the Braves and the Dodgers in the NLCS this year. If that is to happen, that would be a lot of fun. Moving over to the AL side, though. My division winners in the East, we have the Orioles. They're going to be the 1 seed. The Central, the 2 seed would be the Houston Astros, and the winner of the Central is the Kansas City Royals as the 3 seed. They would have to take on the Toronto Blue Jays, who I have as the 6 seed, and the Rays take on the Yankees in the other wild card game. Rays-Yankees, I'm going to take the Yankees just because they have the star power there. The Rays are going to be really good. They always are. They always find a way to be really, really good. But I do believe that the Yankees are just this is really kind of their last year to be competitive, I think. So they got Juan Soto for 1 year. This is their all-in push. They need to win it. This is a desperate team. I think that that'll get them past the wild card round in Tampa Bay. And on the top of the bracket, I think the Blue Jays are going to beat the Royals in the postseason, setting up a matchup with Houston in the second round, and the Orioles will be playing the Yankees. These two are going to be interesting. I do think Houston is going to beat Toronto. Toronto has proven that they're not the greatest in the playoffs. They've proven not to be the most relied upon team in the clutch, losing some pretty heartbreaking losses in recent memory. But the other side of that, the Yankees and the O's, the O's had a little bit of postseason taste last season. They did get swept by the Rangers, the eventual World Series champions. But I think this is the year that they can make a run. So I have the Orioles taking down the Yankees. The Yankees just don't have the pitching to keep up with the Orioles. The Orioles' pitching rotation goes a little deeper than theirs, and in the playoffs, I think that's really good. It's what's going to make a difference in some of these tight matchups. And in the ALCS, that leaves us with Houston and Baltimore. As much as I'd like to pick Baltimore, I really would. I just think that they're really young, and Houston has that experience. I think if it's a short series, I think Baltimore takes it. But if this series goes long, then Houston's going to take it. I'm going to pick Baltimore to win this series, setting up a Baltimore-Atlanta World Series matchup. Although I do think that this would be really close. Like I said, a long series I think favors Houston since they have the experience and they're ready for it. The Orioles, if they can keep it into like a 5-game or less series, I think they'll be able to take them. So World Series, we have the Orioles and the Braves. Orioles and the Braves in the World Series. I think this is the Braves' year. I do. The Braves have the best pitching staff in baseball. I think they have probably the second best offensive lineup in baseball, only behind the Dodgers. Their defense is going to be elite. Their bullpen is stacked to the gills. There's just no weaknesses on that team. Now, anything can happen with injuries, but looking at that team, looking at what they've gone through, the adversity, the back-to-back losses to the Phillies in the NLDS, they are ready to go. They're ready to explode. They won a World Series not too long ago. I think that with this team, with Ronald Acuna, probably getting his second MVP in a row, this is their year. I think the Braves are taking home the World Series championship. The Commissioner's Trophy will return to Atlanta for the first time since 2021. So that is my prediction. The MVP predictions, I think Ronald Acuna will win MVP in the NL. In the AL, let's give it to Julio Rodriguez. Julio Rodriguez is one of the most exciting players in all of baseball. Might push them into a playoff spot. They'll be in that grab with the Toronto Blue Jays for that last spot, I believe. The Cy Youngs, Cy Young is going to be a lot of fun. In the NL, I'm giving it to Spencer Strider. Spencer Strider added another pitch. He is already one of the best strikeout pitchers in all of baseball. But Spencer Strider adding another pitch to deal with righties. He added a curveball. It looks crazy good. He is going to be a monster this season. I think he runs away with that Cy Young. And in the AL, give me Corbin Burns with the Orioles. He's an elite pitcher. He's getting a better defense behind him. You get one of the best catchers in baseball in Adley Rutschman calling pitches. He hasn't won one yet. I believe that it's about his time. It's about time for him to get one. Corbin Burns in the AL should win the Cy Young Award. I'm very excited for this baseball season. It kicks off tomorrow. My Nationals are going to be really bad, but got some young talent. I'm very excited for it. Anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to the MLB prediction episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, on opening day. We'll talk a little bit about the stuff that has been going on, as well as any other major breaking stories from the rest of the day and coming through tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit